Got some new fan art for you guys. Also, I wanted to formally announce that I'll be going to the annual Secular Student Alliance Conference in Columbus, Ohio, from June 29th to July 1st. I hope I get to see some of you guys there. Not speaking, I'm just making an appearance and helping out with the street epistemology table. A link to the conference website is in the description. Meeting you guys at Faithless Forum was awesome, so maybe I'll get to meet more of you. So I've had a lot of people asking for a video on paganism and Wicca for a really long time. It's just hard to research, so it took a lot longer than usual to make. But finally, your prayers to the almighty Loki have been answered. Let's talk about paganism. So what does the word pagan mean? Where did it come from? The first sources we have of the word being used are from the 4th century CE. It was used by Latin Christians to refer to poor, rural villagers. Eventually, as time went on, the word usage adapted to apply to any non-Abrahamic or foreign religions. The Abrahamic religions are basically any religions that originated from ancient Israelites and worship the God of Abraham, or Yahweh. That includes Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. But interestingly enough, it actually includes some less-known religions, the Baha'i Faith, Yazidi, Mandeanism, and a few others. Anyways, as I'm sure we all know, Christianity's been super oppressive throughout its history. But despite its attempts to put a stop to various practices like alchemy, astrology, and magic, they all survived in different ways, and to different degrees. The Renaissance was from roughly 1300 to 1600, and there was a lot of magic practicing during that time, mostly based on ancient Greco-Roman mysticism. Renaissance magic included some of the following forms of magic. First, we have necromancy. Necromancy is probably what people think of when they think black magic. It's usually done at night, and it deals with things like raising people from the dead. I really wonder how they came to the conclusion that this was a real thing, that it was possible to raise somebody from the dead. I can just about guarantee nobody has ever actually seen it happen, but it persists. Anyways, there's also divination through necromancy, which basically means these people were attempting to tell the future. A lot of the practices deal with blood or death in some way, so it's been banned in Christianity for a very long time. Then we have geomancy, which is where people would throw something on the ground and read the shapes to tell the future, like sand or dirt or something. There were even charts that came with it. Long and long ago, when I was young, I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z. It was one of my favorite shows, and for you anime fans out there, don't get excited, that's basically the only anime show I watched consistently. Aside from Pokemon, of course, but that's kind of assumed considering I grew up in the 90s and 2000s. Anyways, in Dragon Ball Z, I remember a scene where a character burned up 3 leaves to tell if somebody was going to be okay. If the leaves all burned up, it meant they'd be fine. It's something similar in this case, except technically I think that's called pyromancy, divining information from burning things. As a side note, I do wonder who came up with the geomancy charts. Next one is hydromancy. That one is obviously divining future knowledge from water, though this is actually using water in something called scrying, which is looking into some medium to find illusionary images. Something like a crystal ball. That's another form of scrying. They believe if they look into something long enough, images will appear that will give them information. So hydromancy is a lot like that, except it uses water instead of a crystal ball. Then we have aeromancy, which is divining future knowledge by throwing sand, seeds, dirt, or some other thing in the air, and interpreting the dust cloud or positioning of whatever you threw. Then there's pyromancy, as I mentioned earlier, burning things and interpreting the way they burn. Then there's chiromancy, which is palm reading. Then there's scapulomancy, which is divining information from an animal's scapula, which is the shoulder blade. If you walk your arms straight out, completely loosen your arm and back muscles, and lean on something, your shoulder blade will pop out. That's what they use in scapulomancy. They'd usually break it and divine information based on how it broke. Kind of like breaking the wishbone. I'm sure a few of you have done that. Interestingly enough, I've done that with my siblings when I was younger, and we were Jehovah's Witnesses. Obviously, we didn't know why we were doing it or what it meant, but we did it. So that's a short summary of some of the common magic practices from the Renaissance. And interestingly enough, Jehovah's Witnesses specifically believe that this stuff is real and can invite demons into your life. Before you can get baptized as Jehovah's Witness, you have to answer 100 questions, which I've talked about before. They have these 100 questions in a book they wrote called Organized to Do Jehovah's Will, near the end. They list the questions and then they list Bible verses along with it. Question 24 says, "What are some of the specific practices that Christians shun?" and the verses they give are Deuteronomy 18:10 and 11, and Revelation 21:8. The Deuteronomy verse says, "There should not be found in you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, anyone who employs divination, anyone practicing magic, anyone who looks for omens, a sorcerer, anyone binding others with a spell, anyone who consults a spirit medium or a fortune teller, or anyone who inquires of the dead." So obviously they take this kind of thing very seriously. They genuinely believe in this ancient magic. I can't say I share the belief. I know I have a lot of Pagan and Wiccan subscribers, and I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad I have Christian subscribers too. I hope we can find common ground and unite to fight religious extremism together. But you can't expect me to accept your claims about practicing magic or luck spells or hexes or any of that until I get a little evidence that it has an actual effect on the real world. The second you prove that to me, I'll take a closer look. Anyways, back to their history. Paganism has changed a lot between then and now. After the Renaissance period, we had the Romantic and Victorian periods. The Romantic period was roughly the 1700s to 1800s, or the 18th and 19th centuries. It came about as a result of glorifying Celtic ancestry, and Neo-Druidism was created to try to reconstruct the Iron Age Celtic religion. Modern Druidry is a quote-unquote spiritual movement that's all about harmony and connection to the natural world. This is your classic common pagan, but they weren't religious movements originally. It was more of a Freemason style setup, almost like a social club, except it was reskinned with Celtic religious allegories. A lot of early Druids were actually Christian. It didn't really become its own religious practice until the 1840s. Victorian occultism was also gaining traction around that time, which is what influenced things like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and Aleister Crowley's Thelema. I know I mispronounced that. Give me a break. Words are hard. So I've mentioned the occult a couple of times, but I haven't gone into detail about that and what it is. The occult comes from the Latin word occultus, which translates to knowledge of the hidden. It was gaining traction in the Middle Ages, and pretty much anything that was mysterious or not well understood was labeled as occult. For example, magnetism was considered occult, and eventually Newton was criticized by contemporaries for his theory of gravity having occult qualities, since it was action at a distance. So that's what occult means. The past 100 years have seen the rise of various pagan religions. Up until the 20th century, people didn't really call themselves pagan as a religion. Now we have neo-paganism, which includes things like Wicca, neo-druidism, and heathenism. We talked about neo-druidism a little bit, so let me touch on Wicca and heathenism. Heathenism doesn't really have a unified belief system like a lot of Abrahamic religions do. So you'll find that they're commonly polytheistic, which means they worship a number of different gods. It also commonly follows pre-Christian Germanic European gods. I was gonna list some, but looking at these names, I know I'm gonna f it up, so bear with me. Names like Sin, Var, Vor, and Lofen are among some of the Old Norse goddesses worshipped by heathens. You know what? I'll just tell you what the names mean. The goddesses' names mean things like theft or robbery, to see, she who dyes the sand red, contested, fenced in, that kind of thing. I'm sure they meant something to the people who came up with the names, but it's completely lost on me at this point. So that's heathenism. Like I said, most of these pagan religions are brand new, like in the past 100 years, including Wicca, which was founded in 1954, surprisingly. Wicca is a pretty big deal among my subscribers, so I'll give it its own little section. When people refer to themselves as a witch, this is generally what they're talking about, but not always. The theology varies wildly from person to person in Wicca. You can be atheist or theist, pantheist or monotheist, but a lot of Wiccans are polytheist. The common view among a lot of Wiccans is that their deities are pre-Christian gods. Like I said, beliefs vary wildly, and that applies to a belief about an afterlife too. A lot of Wiccans believe in a soul that persists after death, and most of them can get on board with the following definition of magic: the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. So they define it as making things happen through will alone. Wiccans usually practice magic through spells. There are a billion different methods and rituals and expected outcomes. Take the jar spell, for example. It was supposedly first done in the late 1600s in an attempt to cure somebody of bewitchment. I'm going to do some quoting from a website I'm going to put in the description because none of this makes sense to me. I'm just explaining the process. So what you have to do is you have to set specific goals. No wishing, no generalizing, no multi-purpose stuff. It has to be realistic, so no Harry Potter stuff. And it has to be ethical, interestingly enough. After you determine those 3 things making up your intent, you take any kind of container and you cleanse it and consecrate it. Not super sure what that means exactly, or how they do it, or how they know it does what they say it does, but that's what you have to do. So after you cleanse and consecrate the container, you paint it with a color or with symbols that are in line with your intent. Once again, not 100% sure what that means, or what that scale is, but I'm going with it. Then you put a few things in the jar. First, you put a personal item in. A picture, a lock of hair, blood, something personal. Then you put in your written intent or prayer. Again, not really sure who you're supposed to be praying to, or what proof there is that they can do something for you, but continuing on. Then you put a liquid in. Apparently urine is used for a number of things, including but not limited to manipulative spells used to manipulate other people, protection jars, or jars used to break a curse. Vinegar is used to harm people or spoil something. Honey or some other sweet liquid like sugar water can be used if you're trying to get somebody to do something, trying to be persuasive, making somebody feel better about something, or trying to make friends. Ammonia is used for cleansing. If you're trying to banish negativity or malevolent entities, then you'd use ammonia. Tinctures or oils are used for a number of things like blessings, health, that kind of thing. It should all be based on intent, of course. Psh, obviously. Did I really need to say that? Then you have solids. Apparently you're going to want to put something in there that goes with your intent, once again. So if you're trying to break a curse, use broken glass or nails or something. To break a couple up, you might put some cat and dog hair in there, you know, because you want them to fight like cats and dogs. Because some cliche term equals magic. I'm sorry guys, I know I have a lot of you who buy into this, but I just can't. I'm trying really hard to take it seriously here. Anyways, apparently according to this website, herbs and crystals have a lot of magical power. So they've given us this handy reference guide to show us the types of things we can use for different intents. We've got things like basil, cucumber, amethyst, jade, sunstone, sage, and just the right combination will definitely, without a doubt, make things happen. So, do it!
Just do it!
But yeah, after that, you have to do a chant called Words of Power. So this person will say something like, money, money, come to me, help me pay these bills I see. Now this is super important. It's absolutely 100% necessary that it rhymes. If it doesn't rhyme, then the god won't hear the prayer. They only understand language that rhymes. Nah, I'm just f***ing with you. But you can see why I'm extremely skeptical, right? Okay, so here are the steps start to finish. Get all the stuff together. Consecrate and cleanse the items. Not necessarily in that order. Ground and center yourself. State your intent. Pick up one item at a time and charge it. Charging apparently empowers the item with your personal intent. As you add the items to the jar, chant to raise the power. When you're done filling the jar, seal it immediately. Then meditate on having acquired your goal. There are a billion different types of spells and a billion different methods for accomplishing them. I haven't seen a lick of evidence that they do anything at all, but it's interesting to learn about them. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys. There's your damn Wicca and Paganism video. I hope you're happy. Tell me about spells you guys have done in the comments. And follow me on Patreon and all social media. Join my Discord, I'm on there all the time. And follow my science channel where I debunk this kind of thing. Thanks for watching, guys.